So imagine waking up every single morning, immediately strapping on an invisible 40-pound weighted vest.
Oh, wow, yeah. That is a brutal way to start the day.
Right, and it's the very first thing you do before your feet even touch the floor. And as you go about your day, every time you check an unread, urgent email, you slide another 1-pound plate into that vest.
Exactly. It just keeps adding up.
Yeah, and every time a friend unloads their personal frustrations onto you over coffee, you slide in like more pounds. By noon, your nervous system isn't just tired, it is biologically preparing for war.
It really is.
You are hauling around the sheer gravitational pull of everyone else's chaos. And today, we are looking at a system designed to help you take that vest off permanently.
We are at a really pivotal point in our exploration today, because this is the grand finale of Season 1, Biohacking Consciousness, the Personal Pillar.
Yes, it is.
And we have been immersing ourselves in the resonance clarity framework of Dr. V, following this amazing case study of a young married professional named Alex.
Which has been quite the journey, you know?
It really has. Up until now, we've been looking at the framework's core concepts.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we definitely have to establish Alex's baseline before we look at her transformation. For the longest time, Alex was the person wearing that 40-pound vest.
She absolutely was.
And the framework actually calls this carrying a metabolic heavy bag, right?
Yes, and that phrase, metabolic heavy bag, is so deliberate because the toll isn't just psychological. It is deeply physiological.
Oh, totally.
When we first met Alex, she was carrying a bag stuffed to the brim with unvetted anxieties, borrowed stress, and just the relentless expectations of her environment. And hauling that around dictated her entire biological baseline.
She was, constantly bouncing between two highly reactive, deeply depleting states of being. I want to break those states down quickly.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because the terminology the framework uses is fascinating, but we need to know what it actually looks like in the body. First, there was what the framework calls the defender frequency of the protector mind.
Right, the snapping.
Exactly. This was Alex snapping, like the time she aggressively barked at her husband, David, over a totally mundane logistical email.
When we talk about the defender frequency, we are talking about a nervous system in sympathetic overdrive. It is an aggressive, survival-based posture.
So she's basically in fight mode.
Yeah. Her amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, was constantly hijacking her responses. She perceived a simple email as a literal predator.
Wow.
So her body dumped cortisol and adrenaline into her bloodstream, preparing her to physically fight.
But she couldn't sustain that fight forever, which brings us to the other extreme, because when she wasn't snapping, she was absorbing.
Yeah.
Like when her friend Maya went through that terrible breakup, Alex didn't just offer support, she acted as an energetic sponge.
She really did.
She completely pulled Maya's distress into her own body, and the framework calls this the absorber frequency of the incoherent mind.
The absorber frequency is essentially empathetic distress taken to a biological extreme. Instead of maintaining a boundary, her nervous system mirrored the panic of the person she was with.
So her own vagus nerve would get thrown off.
Exactly. The vagus nerve, that superhighway connecting the brain to the gut and heart, would begin to dysregulate. Both the defender and the absorber frequencies left her completely depleted.
Because her biology was constantly reacting to external stimuli rather than generating its own internal stability.
Right on. She had no anchor.
But Alex has put in the work. She has actively unbuckled that metabolic heavy bag. She took the vest off.
She really did.
And she has transitioned into what Dr. V calls the resonator frequency of the aligned mind. She is centered, her heart rate variability is regulated, and her prefrontal cortex is firmly in the driver's seat.
Which is huge.
It is, and the mission today is to see exactly how this newly regulated biology holds up when an absolute avalanche of domestic stress hits her all at once.
Because we all know it is incredibly easy to be zen when you are meditating on a cushion in a perfectly quiet room.
Oh, for sure.
The true test of internal coherence is always external chaos. You don't know how waterproof a ship is until you take it into a storm.
It is such a good way to put it. And we are about to look at a Category 5 Sunday afternoon. I want you, listening right now, to think about your own life.
Yeah, think about those weekends.
Have you ever had one of those weekends where the universe just seems to conspire against your peace? Where absolutely everyone else's dysregulation lands squarely on your shoulders?
We've all been there.
Today, we're going to walk through how Alex deflected a perfect storm of stress, not just with positive thinking, but by fundamentally altering her biological responses.
Let's set the parameters of this stress test. So it's Sunday, Alex is at home, and 3 distinct triggers hit her in rapid succession.
Okay, lay it on us.
First, her husband David begins spiraling into a total panic over a highly complex, expensive home maintenance issue.
Yikes.
Right. And while that situation is unfolding, her brother Jack calls. Jack is deeply critical and cynical, and he wants to aggressively vent about a career setback.
Timing is everything, huh?
Exactly. And finally, her neighbor John appears outside, loudly and aggressively complaining about a disputed property line.
Oh, man. 3 different people, 3 totally different demands on her nervous system. Let's look at the old Alex first. How much would this Sunday have cost her biologically?
Oh, the metabolic cost would have been staggering. Facing David's panic, Jack's cynicism, and John's aggression, the old Alex would have defaulted straight to that absorber frequency.
She would have just soaked it all up.
Yeah. The resonance clarity framework uses a brilliant analogy here. Her nervous system would become like an old car radio with a jammed scan button.
Oh, just frantically skipping from station to station, picking up snippets of static, but never locking onto a clear signal.
Exactly. She would be picking up the emotional weather of whatever room she walked into and treating it as her own native broadcast. And the physical toll of that jammed radio is immense.
Because her body can't differentiate between her own danger and borrowed stress, right?
Exactly. Her heart rate would become erratic. Her respiratory rate would become shallow, basically starving her brain of optimal oxygen.
Wow.
Even the physical digestion of her Sunday lunch would slow down to a crawl because her body is diverting energy to manage this perceived barrage of threats. She would be literally metabolizing everyone else's chaos.
That sounds exhausting. But the new Alex operates entirely differently. Let's look at the first challenge, David.
Right, the home maintenance panic.
David is her husband. She loves him. But right now, he's totally dysregulated. He is spiraling over this house issue, projecting his anxiety everywhere.
He's throwing mud everywhere.
Right. But instead of falling into the mud with him, and instead of getting defensive and snapping, Alex deploys something called somatic grounding.
This is a purely physical intervention before any psychological processing even begins.
So she literally plants her bare feet flat on the floor.
Yes.
She intentionally drops her shoulders, actively releasing the tension, and she takes 3 very deep, controlled breaths, focusing heavily on the exhale.
And notice, she doesn't utter a single word of reassurance to David yet.
Right. She just changes her physical posture. Wait, I understand how deep breathing and dropping her shoulders calms her down. That makes perfect physiological sense.
Sure.
But how does just standing flat-footed calm someone else down? It sounds like magic.
Well, it's not magic. It's the fundamental reality of mammalian neurobiology. Human nervous systems do not exist in isolation.
Okay.
We possess something called mirror neurons, and our nervous systems are constantly subconsciously scanning the people around us for cues of safety or danger. It's a process called neuroception.
So when David is pacing and panicking,
He is broadcasting a danger signal. If Alex's breathing had grown shallow and her posture had tightened, David's brain would have registered that as confirmation of the threat, which would escalate his panic.
okay, so is it literally like a tuning fork? If I strike a tuning fork and there's a second one sitting silently nearby, that second fork will start humming at the exact same pitch without me even touching it. Is that what is happening between Alex and David?
That tuning fork analogy is scientifically spot on for this dynamic.
That's wild.
By maintaining her resonator frequency, by keeping her own heart rate steady, her breathing deep, and her posture open, Alex becomes a biological anchor in that room.
She's the dominant frequency.
Exactly. Her nervous system is the stronger, more coherent signal. Without her saying a single word to solve the plumbing or electrical issue, David's dysregulated nervous system detects her safety cues.
And he organically begins to mirror her calm internal state. His breathing slows to match hers.
He has to. It's biological.
She changes his frequency just by holding her own. That is an incredible application of the framework. But anchoring a partner who loves you is one thing, you know?
Right. Subconsciously, David wants to find safety with Alex.
Exactly. The biological stakes change entirely when the incoming dysregulation isn't just seeking safety, but is actively hostile or critical. Because right after she anchors David, the phone rings. It's her brother, Jack.
Oh, Jack. He's bringing a completely different energetic signature to the table. He isn't looking for a calm tuning fork.
No, he is not.
He wants to vent about his career, and he's bringing his trademark, cynical, combative energy. He basically wants Alex to validate his anger.
Which brings us to one of the most striking visual concepts within the resonance clarity framework of Dr. V, the lotus leaf principle.
I love this concept. If you observe a lotus leaf in nature, it grows in a swamp. It thrives right in the thick of the murky, toxic mud. But if you pull a lotus leaf out of that swamp, its surface is entirely waxily impervious to the mud. It is fully immersed in a chaotic, dirty environment, but the mud simply beads up and rolls right off.
It absorbs absolutely none of the swamp's toxicity.
Exactly.
So Alex has to figure out how to become the lotus leaf while she's holding the phone to her ear. She is fully immersed in Jack's cynical swamp, but she cannot let his mud stick to her biology.
And she achieves this through a highly actionable biohack called affect labeling.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, while Jack is hurling these cynical, frustrated comments through the phone, Alex isn't trying to change his mind. And she isn't absorbing his anger either.
She's just listening.
She's listening. But silently, in her own mind, she repeats a very specific phrase. She tells herself, "This is just my unaligned mind absorbing. I am not that mind."
This is just my unaligned mind absorbing. I am not that mind. She's creating an active psychological boundary.
Yes.
But how does that thought actually protect her biology?
What's fascinating here is the neurology behind it. This is where we connect the psychology directly to the biology. When you are being aggressively vented at, your amygdala lights up.
The lizard brain.
Right. It perceives the aggressive tone as a literal threat to your survival, and it wants to trigger a fight-or-flight response immediately. It wants to dump cortisol so you can either scream back at Jack or flee the conversation.
It wants you to survive the phone call by any means necessary.
Exactly. But by using specific, structured language to name the internal process by silently articulating, "This is just my unaligned mind absorbing," you force a profound neurological shift.
How so?
Language processing requires the prefrontal cortex, which is the analytical, logical, executive center of your brain. By forcing yourself to articulate a complex observation about your own state, you literally redirect blood flow and electrical activity away from the reactive amygdala.
Wow.
And you reboot that analytical prefrontal cortex.
So you're basically hitting Alt-Delete on the lizard brain before your nervous system completely crashes.
That's a great way to put it. You decouple your core identity from the stress of the moment. Jack can keep talking, the mud can keep splashing around, but Alex's prefrontal cortex is firmly online.
She remains waxily impervious.
Exactly, because she has given her brain an analytical task that acts as a biological brake on her stress response.
I mean, think about how incredibly practical that is for you in your own life. You do not have to absorb your family's mud.
You really don't.
When your own version of Jack calls you up, you don't have to manage their incoherent frequency. That is their swamp. You just have to maintain your own lotus leaf surface.
Let them vent.
Right. You let them vent. You label the affect, and you protect your prefrontal cortex.
It is the ultimate form of biological energy conservation.
But the Sunday stress test isn't over yet, is it? We have moved from a panicking spouse to a cynical sibling on the phone to the final, most escalated threat of the afternoon.
Oh, yeah.
The ultimate boss battle neighbor, John.
John represents an in-person, aggressive territorial dispute.
He is outside, he is in Alex's physical space, and he is complaining loudly and aggressively about a property boundary.
It's intense.
Now, human nature dictates that this is the moment the dam should break. This is where Alex should finally snap back.
It is the biological expectation. When someone invades your territory and raises their voice, your biological circuit breaker is designed to trip.
Let's talk about that circuit breaker for a second. Because when someone is yelling in your face, your vagus nerve responds by yanking you right out of a state of social engagement, right?
It dumps you directly into the sympathetic nervous system.
You prepare for physical conflict, and it is a highly physical transformation. When that circuit breaker trips, your vocal cords literally constrict. They change shape.
Which a lot of people don't realize.
Evolutionary biology dictates this happens so you can project dominance, so you can sound larger and more intimidating to a rival.
That is why people's voices get so sharp, clipped, and loud when they get into a heated argument.
They are automatically shifting into the defender frequency. They are biologically going to war.
And in the heat of the moment, that restriction, that volume, feels like power. You mistakenly believe that you are setting a boundary by matching their aggression.
But you're actually experiencing a total loss of control, aren't you? You are surrendering your biological steering wheel to the person yelling at you.
It is a catastrophic loss of energy. You are just mirroring their dysregulation.
So how does Alex avoid tripping that circuit breaker with John screaming about property lines in her face? How does she stop her vocal cords from constricting?
She utilizes a tool the framework calls the aligned mind question. In the fraction of a second before she opens her mouth to respond to John, she internally asks herself one question.
What's the question?
What is actually mine and what is not?
What is actually mine and what is not? Okay, but again, how does a simple philosophical question stop a biological circuit breaker from tripping?
Because it acts as a massive psychological wedge that gives the prefrontal cortex one final overriding task.
Yeah.
By asking what is actually hers, she realizes in real time that John's anger, his frantic physical energy, his lack of coherence, none of that belongs to her.
That is his metabolic heavy bag.
Exactly. By actively refusing to claim ownership of his emotion, she prevents her amygdala from interpreting his anger as her emergency.
She literally refuses to put his weighted vest on, so the vagus nerve never gets the signal to shut down social engagement.
And because the vagus nerve stays regulated, she retains true emotional sovereignty. She speaks from her own center.
Her vocal cords remain relaxed.
Yes, her breathing remains steady. She refuses to match her neighbor's frantic frequency.
And the result of that is profound. By staying anchored in the resonator frequency, she de-escalates the conflict entirely on her terms.
She never enters that vicious cycle of snapping and defending.
John actually runs out of steam, right?
Right.
Because he isn't getting the defensive friction he is subconsciously looking for to fuel his own anger.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, let's look at the totality of what Alex accomplished on this Sunday.
Let's do it.
She didn't just grit her teeth and survive 3 stressful events. She took absolute responsibility for her own biological resonance. And in doing so, she completely altered the ecosystem of her environment.
So what does this all mean for her day-to-day life?
It means her home is no longer a tactical negotiation zone. In the past, her dining room was an emotional minefield where everyone's dysregulation bounced off everyone else.
Like the jammed radio.
Right. But now, because she can quickly return to her aligned mind, because she utilizes somatic grounding, the lotus leaf principle, and the psychological wedge, she's finally doing what the resonance clarity framework calls traveling light.
Traveling light, I really love that imagery. She unbuckled her own 40-pound vest, and she steadfastly refused to put David's, Jack's, or John's vests on either.
She is carrying only the weight that actually belongs to her.
It is the definition of biological efficiency. Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Yeah, oh yeah.
As the sun begins to set on this chaotic Sunday, and as we reach the conclusion of Season 1 of our journey with Alex, she is standing in her peaceful living room.
Traveling light.
Exactly. She successfully managed the tuning fork effect with her husband, she remained a lotus leaf with her brother, and she maintained emotional sovereignty with her neighbor. But then a notification pops up on her laptop.
Because the real world never actually pauses.
It does not. The notification is an invitation for Alex to lead a high-stakes, multi-million-dollar merger negotiation at her tech firm.
This is the perfect transition, because the domestic mud of family dynamics, as challenging and intimate as it is, was merely the training ground for Alex.
The warm-up.
Yeah. She has mastered her inner state in the personal pillar of her life. She is now ready to take that lotus leaf anchor and her resonator frequency into the incredibly murky, high-pressure, cutthroat waters of the professional world.
The stakes are about to get exponentially higher, which sets the stage perfectly for you to join us for Season 2, The Corporate Pillar.
It's going to be intense.
We are going to follow Alex as she steps into the boardroom to prove that true leadership isn't about aggressively managing other people's actions. It is entirely about mastering the biological signal you generate from within. I cannot wait to explore Season 2.
But before we can navigate the boardroom or even our own dining rooms, we have to know our own baseline. You cannot unbuckle your heavy bag if you don't know how much weight is currently in it, Awareness must always precede action.
Exactly, which is why we have a challenge for you, the listener, before you join us for Season 2. It is time to find out what your own interstate baseline frequency actually is.
Highly recommend doing this.
I want to encourage you to go to drv.com. They have a completely free interstate discovery tool. It is an incredible educational resource that you can use right now to see where your frequency is currently sitting. Are you naturally a defender?
Yeah.
An absorber?
Very eye-opening.
While you're exploring the site, you can access the custom audio reset and the 7-day reset. All of this is completely free at drv.com. frequencyresonator.com, and it is the exact toolkit you need to start stepping into your own resonator frequency. Go find out what you're carrying and start traveling light.
And as you go about the rest of your day, this raises an important question. One final provocative thought for you to mull over as we close out Season 1.
Leave us with a good one.
Think back to the last time you felt utterly, deeply exhausted after what should have been a simple, everyday conversation. Were you actually carrying your own genuine fatigue in that moment? Or were you acting as an energetic sponge, quietly absorbing the heavy, unvetted chaos of the person standing in front of you?
Wow.
The choice of what you biologically absorb and what you allow to simply roll off the lotus leaf is entirely yours.